Thanks for tuning in to the Jim Feist Handicapping Show on Proline TV for another Tuesday as we are fresh off of the national championship game in college basketball last night. And all attention now, Jim, is to Augusta National in Georgia as the Masters is going to take place, the biggest event in professional golf in the entire world. So that's why it's a really great week to bring in our special guest.
We have a very special guest, and I want to mention before we get started, this is hosted by Dom DeMarcos, 9785 West Charleston here in Las Vegas. If you're ever in Las Vegas, make sure you go by there. They have great pizza, great food, great host, great service. And Brady, you've been there a couple times. You've done the show there a few times, and hopefully this fall you'll do it again in person.
Well, yeah, come for the show, stay for the pizza, right? No, I love Dom DeMarcos, and Al's a wonderful person, wonderful proprietor. And yeah, it's great to be on that list of people that are invited to do your show there. And yeah, aside from that, it really is a wonderful place. And we're not just sitting here plugging our buddy. It's one of the best pizza places in Southern Nevada.
And it's been voted that with that honor very many times. It really is. And not just pizza. They have discounted wine. I mean, they have everything. I mean, they got a great wine list and a lot of great different foods. And when talking about golf, Brady, you're a pretty good golfer. And you've also become a very good golf handicapper. There's not a lot of people that know how to handicap golf. And I'm one of them that I don't handicap golf. I understand golf. I've played it at a very miserable level, of course, but don't smile so much because you've actually witnessed my game. So,
I have, and it didn't look too shabby.
That's pretty damn bad. I know it. It's bad, but I haven't really played in a long time due to injuries. But tell me about your golf, how you gotten into golf, and what got you into the sports handicapping, which you also, by the way, everybody, Brady's pretty darn good at picking sports games too. I mean, you won some contests here in Las Vegas. You've done very well. We worked together many, many years ago, and we've done some shows together since.
Yeah. And, a lot of credit goes to pioneers in the industry like yourself, Jim, and our dear friend, God rest his soul, Dave Koken, Mark Lawrence. That's where I really cut my teeth in this business 32 years ago when I came to town. Wow. Dave Koken was one of the first people I ever met in the business. I was always a golfer from the time I was about 13 years old, but was really introduced to the wagering side of things when I came to Las Vegas. And so that was kind of a match made in heaven for me. I loved the game, and then, kind of figured out I could bet on it and this type of thing. I started playing in golf fantasy leagues and won a couple of those, and then started, dabbling in the futures market. I remember I hit Payne Stewart to win the U.S. Open at Pinehurst in 1999 at 25-1. And then as I got further involved, you find out about all these derivative markets, the outright market, picking the winner. That's certainly the most fun. That's where all the glory is. But really, there's a number of different ways and even better ways to make money betting golf. Probably first and foremost, the head-to-head matchups. That's probably really the best chance you have to win, where you have the smallest hold percentage and the most positive EV. An outright market, you're trying to pick one guy out of 100 and something golfers. And, that's a little bit of a needle in the haystack. It's a lot of fun, but that's probably where I risk the least amount of money because it is the toughest market to tackle. But, gosh, I've been doing that, 25 plus years. And you talk about the Super Contest victory, the NFL handicapping contest over at the Westgate. Won that in 2011, and that really kind of brought my handicapping career front and center, where I started doing more media appearances like this. But again, I credit you guys, the OGs, who really got me started in the whole racket many years ago.
Well, you're pretty darn good at it. I can attest to that. I've followed your stuff, and of course, like I said, we worked together. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, we worked together, something like that.
Yeah, well, I remember the days when we were playing golf together. Seriously, you were joking, but it was you and I and Dave that played at least a few times together, and that's when we were doing some things. Of course, Dave, was a fixture on your Proline TV show, and Scott Spreitzer, and so it's a relatively small knit community, the handicappers out here in Las Vegas.
When you talk about golf. I played, like you said, I played some golf. Let's just say I played at golf. You're a golfer. I played at golf. There's a big difference, by the way. With all the metrics and everything and all the data now and, the strokes gained and how do you interpret all that? Can you explain that to people that don't really understand it?
Sure. And let's like take a football game here and you pick out maybe 10 statistics that you're going to use as a base for your football handicap. You're looking at third down conversions. You're looking at red zone efficiency. You're looking at how many times they sack the quarterback. Whatever you figure are important areas of a football game that you can derive information and data from. It's similar in golf. But I think first and foremost, and one reason I've been successful in golf handicapping is I go back, 30 some years where I was playing in these fantasy leagues and I really had to learn about horses for courses. Golf is very interesting because they're playing a different golf course every week. It's very similar to NASCAR, where these drivers are driving on a different track every week. And certain drivers are built more so for certain tracks. And it's the same thing with golf. Jim, you know this as a player. There are certain courses you probably feel more comfortable on versus others, where maybe a strength of your game is driving the golf ball or a strength of your game is putting. Every golf course is different and caters to different strengths. So I think first and foremost, you have to figure out the course and what skill sets are going to be most important at this particular course. Augusta National, of course, is the flavor of the week here, and driving distance is incredibly important. It's a big boy golf course. Strokes gained approach, iron play is incredibly important. And then, of course, we know about the famous greens around Augusta. Putting and scrambling from those treacherous, lightning quick greens is an incredible skill set that goes towards winning the Masters. So I think identifying what it takes to win at a certain golf course and then looking at those handful of stats and say, okay, who's the best player that pops in all those areas or checks all those boxes? And that's probably a good place to start.
I want to cut in here, Jim, because since you're on that subject, then which stats for the viewers out there, then they're going to go and check out PGAtour.com. Maybe they got their own a particular fantasy site they want to go to, which has all sorts of stats. Give them the stats they need to look at this week.
Yeah, this week for Augusta, I mentioned driving distance. Driving distance certainly trumps driving accuracy at Augusta National. The fairways are very wide, so it's actually difficult to miss the fairways, but you do need to hit the fairways in the right spot, because you'll see as you watch the coverage and the previews and what have you, there's all kinds of elevation change and slope. Rarely do you find an even lie in the fairways at Augusta National. Oftentimes they will cant in one direction when you're trying to hit a shot the other direction. That's part of what it makes it so difficult. So not to say that accuracy isn't required, but distance is really probably more important because it is such a long golf course. And you'll also hear this week that they mow the fairways in the direction back towards the tee. So the grain of the grass is facing you. And oftentimes that will minimize the rollout that you get on your drive. So not only is it long, but you're not really getting that extra roll had the grain been going towards the hole. That is intentional, of course, on the part of Augusta National. But driving distance certainly is a spot that I looked at. Scrambling, I talked about on these greens. Greg and Jim, you guys both know, Mickelson, Tiger, the wizards around these greens. The short game has to be spot on. You have to be able to get up and down. Strokes gained putting on bent grass. Bent grass is the surface here at Augusta National. It's like putting on a marble tabletop. You have to, and it's almost not like you have to be good at reading the greens. You just have to know what the reads are, meaning you have to have experience here at Augusta. The average amount of times playing the Masters before one goes on to win is about 6 times. So that says, you know, there hasn't been a guy that has come here on his first try since 1979 to win the thing. You have to have some experience at this golf course and learn the little nooks and crannies and nuances of everything about this place. Because it is so intricate and demanding, it takes a while before you can crack the code. Strokes gained approach probably has become the very most important metric here at Augusta. Iron play, hitting greens in regulation. And we all know, again, I go back to these greens that feature a great deal of undulation and are incredibly fast. And you'll hear guys talk about this, hitting the right quadrant of the green. It's not just about hitting the green where you might hit it and it might roll off. You've got to hit the right spot in the green versus where the pin position is. And again, that goes into experience. Guys that know this place are better at doing that. And then it also speaks to accurate iron play. So strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, scrambling, driving distance, par 5 scoring is huge. The only group of holes that play under par at Augusta National are the par 5s. That's where you have to attack this golf course. I think Danny Willett is one of the last winners of the Masters in the last 15, 20 years that did not finish the week under par on the par 5s. Very rarely does it happen. And we remember Tiger Woods famously, you know, used to just kill the par 5s. And that goes a long way into winning here at Augusta. 3-putt avoidance. These greens are so big and so difficult that making a 3-putt is not hard to do. And the more of those that you can avoid, the better. And then finally, the par 4s. How well are you doing on the par 4s? All of which measure in the neighborhood of 450 to 500 yards. So if you're looking at par 4s and how guys fare on those particular holes, you want to look at that particular yardage, about 450 to 500, as all of the par 4s at Augusta National are going to be in that range.
2 questions. How many practice rounds do these people get, the players, when they go there to Augusta?
Well, I think it's possibly as many as 3. You have the Champions Dinner on Tuesday night. You have the par 3 contest on Wednesday. Oftentimes, a guy will play another 9 holes or something on Wednesday, maybe 18 on Mondays. You know, so I think you have 3 days to kind of do what you want. Oftentimes, guys will show up a week early, you know, and try and get a few extra rounds in. So I would say the standard is 2 or 3 for sure, Jim.
How about if you have a caddy? I mean, you bring your own caddy, I imagine, or I think you can. But having an experienced caddy, somebody that's been there often, or somebody maybe that is there all the time and you just hire them while you're there.
Yeah, I think that's been done. I want to say, I don't believe Nicholas, but maybe Ben Crenshaw. You know, we could look this up. I believe there are at least 1 or 2 Masters champions that have, you know, kind of hired a caddy that works there at Augusta National on a regular basis for the membership. And there could have been this situation where their own caddy wasn't available or what have you. But it just further goes to the point here that knowing this golf course matters a great deal. So, yeah, it is not necessarily atypical and not necessarily a bad idea to just go and hire a guy with local course knowledge, right?
Yes, it would be working for me, that's for sure. But Greg, you have any questions for Brady?
Yeah, I think that the other thing you were talking about experience, Brady, that's the one thing when you take a look at some of the trends that really stick out, not just experience, but also the cream rises to the top. You don't see a lot of long shots anymore, or period, really winning the Masters. The last 12 first-time winners all ranked in the top 30. And I think the average appearances for the last 12 first-time winners is close to 8. Rory, of course, won on his 17th appearance last year. So that's why I think you gave all those stats, which is something you have to look at, of course, every week on every different golf course. And even though they're going back to the same golf courses like the Masters every year, it just seems like this is just one of those years. This is just one of those weeks where that you really do have to, I think if you're looking at a percentage, agree or disagree as far as what's more important, the stats this season or the experience results at the golf course. This is one of those weeks where I kind of side with the experience of the golf course.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head there. The Masters is actually the most predictive tournament of the entire year. And that's not to say it's easy to pick a winner. You still have to land on the right guy. But to Greg's point there, course history here is stickier than any tournament, meaning guys that play well here typically do so year after year after year after year. Look at Jordan Spieth. Look at Adam Scott. Look at Fred Couples all these years, has still played well at this golf course. Guys that play well here tend to do so again year after year. Patrick Reed won here in 2018. He's finished top 10 4 times since then. Adam Scott won in 2013. He hasn't missed a cut. He missed a cut last year. That was the first cut he's missed at Augusta since 2010. So consistency and course history, like Greg touches on, is probably stronger here than any other place in the world. And that also goes into the correlated courses. I pick out 3 in particular that I think are especially strong. Riviera Country Club in Los Angeles, where they play the Genesis Invitational. The Plantation course at Kapalua, where they begin the season in January and play the Sentry. And then also the old course at St. Andrews, where they play the British Open every 5 or 10 years. If you look at who's won those tournaments and who has also done well at Augusta, it's like the same list of people. It's absolutely amazing. Adam Scott has won the Masters. He's won in LA. Phil Mickelson, Nick Faldo, Fred Couples. Bubba Watson multiple times, Dustin Johnson, Mike Weir. The guys that have won at Riviera and have won the Masters is an extensive list. And it's very similar with Kapalua and St. Andrews. It ties into course history, Greg, and how these guys continue to do well here at Augusta year after year. They also do well at these same golf courses year in and year out. So that narrows the field. There's 91 players in this field. You don't think it's going to be Fred Couples or Vijay Singh or one of the former champion, senior guys. You don't expect it's going to be an amateur. You don't expect it's going to be a first timer, because we talk about needing experience. It kind of narrows the field down to about 30 or 40 guys. Now you just got to pick the right one.
Wow. That's really interesting. So in other words, there's no Cinderellas, just like the NCAA.
No.
Yeah. Eliminated the Cinderellas.
It's a pretty chalky tournament. I mean, look at the last few years: Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler. It's the cream of the crop, like Greg said.
Right. And as far as live wagering, this is one of those events that you're not going to make a lot of money on. And I wouldn't really advise many people to do a whole lot of live wagering unless you're going to specifically target a player that is off to a good start, and maybe his odds were around 25, 30 to 1. And he is one of the players on the top of the leaderboard going into the weekend, because when Rory won last year, he started the second round in 27th place. And it was the first time that anybody has started outside the top 12 after the first round and won the Masters. So he had a streak, which is incredible.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize it was the first time, but I know it is absolutely, the majority of the time, if you don't start out in the top 10 or so after round 1, your chances become slim and none. So it's not necessarily what they call a catch-up golf course. You have to get out to a good start. And like you say, Greg, that is typically the pattern here much more often than not.
Yeah, that's so 19 of the last 20 began the
There you
second
go.
round inside the top 12. Then, if you think about it too, if you go into just the final day, you can take a look at the fact that 31 of the last 36 winners began the final round in the final pairing.
Right. Yep.
And 22 of of those 36 began the final round with the lead. Rory, of course, did end up with the lead. He led by 2 strokes. But the funny thing was that the record for coming from behind to win was 8 strokes. That was way back in 1956. Justin Rose, as we know last year, came back to tie Rory. He was 7 strokes back to force the playoff. And so Justin didn't win, but he came that close to doing something that only one other player had ever done. And that was Jack Burke at 8 strokes back, is come from behind that far. And that's always is strange to me because of how volatile the holes can be at Augusta National, where you would think that someone along the lines would get hot on Sunday, maybe a couple of eagles, maybe they birdie 2 or 3 straight holes, because that's the type of golf course it could be. If you get hot, it just doesn't happen very often.
Well, the Masters doesn't start until the second 9 on Sunday, right?
Right.
To your point, I mean, how about Jack in '86, the 40-year anniversary of Jack Nicklaus in 1986, when he went nuts on the second 9 on Sunday and won the green jacket. So yeah, no, your point is well taken there, that you would think there would be a Sunday charge happening more often than not. But again, the winner typically comes out of the final pairing, typically goes into a guy that is probably, I don't know the exact stat, but I think it's 4 shots or less off the lead. You're outside of that 4-shot window on Sunday. Your chances, again, are slim and none. So there's a lot of pointers here to your original point, Greg, about in-game wagering. You want to look at guys that get off to a good start. You want to look at guys that are not far off the lead. Again, it's kind of like what we're talking about before in the outright market pre-tournament. Long shots don't often win here. I think Charles Schwartzel in 2011 was the last guy at a triple-digit price, 100-1 to win here. I would say the average price over the last 20 years or something is probably in the neighborhood of 30-1 or so.
Yeah, and I think there are, let's see, let me pop it up on the screen here, because there are a lot of players. We don't normally get this many players within like 18-1. So you've got Scheffler, Rahm, DeChambeau, that's McIlroy's 4, Oberg 5, Schauffele 6. And this isn't as tight as my sports book, which has Young at about 18 or 16. Fitzpatrick is about 18 or 16. So you're talking about 8, 9 golfers that are either 18 or lower. And again, that's where the winners are going to come from. But the sports books are not making it easy for you to make money. These are the guys that are going to win, and we're not going to give you a big price.
Well, Brady, you mentioned the head-to-head, but then there's also the top 5, the top 10, the top 20. Do you also approach it that way? Because like you said, it's so difficult to pick out one guy. But do you do all of that? Is that what you mean by like other types of betting?
Absolutely, Jim. And that's what I always profess is, I mentioned earlier, the least amount of risk for me is in the outright market. It's the most fun. It's wonderful to be sitting there on Sunday, sweating out your guy coming down the stretch at 40-1. That's a lot of fun, but it doesn't always happen. And so that will be a very small wager for me. And I've got 7 guys this year that I've picked out, and I don't recommend doing much more than that, because again, we talked about maybe there's 30, 40 guys, maybe 30 is even too many, that can really win this thing. And when you start to get into the 8, 9, 10, 12 different futures, you're really cutting into a possible profit. And then what if you miss them all? Then, that's a big hit. So the smallest amount of risk on a few handful of guys or whatever will be in the outright market. But then in the top 20 or top 10, the finish position market, that's where I might bet 2 or 3 times that amount of what I'm betting on an outright win. Because now the odds aren't as great. Let's say Colin Morikawa is 30-1 to win the Masters. To finish top 10, he might be plus 250 or something like that. So, it's not as great a payout, but again, you have a lot better shot at winning that bet. So I'll risk a lot more in that market. And then where I risk the most amount of money, Jim, is the head-to-head matchups, because that's truly where you have the best opportunity to win. And they're not actual head-to-head matchups. These are created by the sports book. And there's all different ones all over the world at every different sports book. But you'll see Scottie Scheffler versus Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth versus Justin Thomas. Who over the course of 4 days is going to have the lower score? And then a price is associated with, the favorite and the underdog. And, that's more like picking the Steelers versus the Patriots in a football game. And I think it's, again, a little bit easier to conceive why I've got a better shot in picking player A or player B versus player A out of 100 some different choices.
Well, give us a few of the top sleepers. I'm not going to call any long shots out there because it's just not going to happen. So give us a few sleepers that you think we should keep an eye on, because obviously if anybody out there is looking for the top 5s or the top 10s, the bigger the odds, the better the payback for sure. So who would you advise us to keep an eye on?
Well, this is a bet that I made, and I made almost every one of my bets prior to Masters Week. I really start looking at the and you guys know the board for who's going to win the Masters really this tournament is completed in early April, and the board for next year's Masters comes up in about May. So it's up there for almost a year. And if you aren't careful, next thing you know, you have 12 futures in your pocket, looking at, oh my gosh, Gary Woodland's 150-1. Give me that and give me that and give me that, So actually, I started this year in February, and this was actually the 22nd of February. I landed on Adam Scott, and I got him at 125-1.
I did too.
There you go.
Yep.
And
what a bargain.
Yeah, very much of a bargain. I'm seeing him nowadays anywhere from about 60-1 to about 100-1. There are still some triple digits out there. I feel the real price on Adam Scott is probably about 80-1. I think he's got a 1 in 80 shot. He's been playing brilliant golf this year.
He has.
You remember last year, he was tied for second going into the final round of the U.S. Open at the hardest golf course in the world, Oakmont Country Club. And then the rain came on Sunday and it got really weird. And, he ended up finishing 12th. J.J. Spahn, of course, went on to win. This year at Bay Hill, he finished 11th. He was 4th in that field, or 5th rather, for driving distance. He finished 4th at Riviera. Of course, he's won at twice before. He is 3rd on tour this year in strokes gained approach. I mean, the guy's 45 years old and he's playing like he's 25. So I think now, again, I mentioned how consistent he is here. We talk about course history. He missed the cut last year, something he hasn't done since 2010. He won it in 2013. He's been playing great, as we say, for probably the last year or so. It would take a little Masters magic, but I do believe the way he's going and the way he knows this property, this will be the 25th time Adam Scott has played the Masters.
Wow.
You think he knows this golf course? Yeah. So I think he's got a legitimate shot. He, like you say, long shot, sleeper, whatever you want to call it. I think he does have a shot.
Okay. So what about the top of the board? If you were going to advise on someone who just wants to pick a winner, who is your favorite right now out of the favorites?
Right. And, if you look at the top of the board, obviously you've got Scottie and Rory. The defending champion has not won since Tiger did it in 2002. So what's that, 24 years or something since the defending champion has won. I don't think Scottie's the right pick this week. Obviously just had a new child. Congratulations to he and his wife, his second child. He had to withdraw from a couple of tournaments here in the last couple of weeks because of the arrival of their second child. So Scottie is able to, I think, turn off a distraction maybe better than anybody in the world right now. But I don't necessarily, and he hasn't been playing great. He hasn't been in tremendous form since he won the American Express earlier this year. His game is, by Scotty standards, has fallen off a little bit. Now, that doesn't necessarily matter. The guy could go out here and win by 5 shots, but I'm not going to land on either of those two guys. Then you look at John Rahm and Xander Schauffele. I know a lot of really sharp people that like them this week. They could certainly end up being your selection. I went down a little bit further and took a shot with Cameron Young and Hideki Matsuyama. Matsuyama won here in 2021. Cameron Young, his last win was the last time we saw him a month ago at the Players Championship. It's also very interesting. If Cameron Young goes on to win the Masters, that will be 3 years in a row that the winner of the Players Championship has also won the Masters. 2 years ago, it was Scotty Scheffler. Last year, Rory McIlroy. And now Cam Young is your current champion of the Players Championship. He's finished top 10 here twice. He was runner-up in 2022 at St. Andrews. He's been runner-up at Riviera, and he's finished 8th at Kapalua. And oh, by the way, he's figured out how to putt. He's always had the game for Augusta, the long game for sure. And his putting has improved immensely. I got him at 28-1. He's anywhere from about 19 to 25. I think he's got a real shot. We always knew the guy had the talent. And now I think he has the mental ability and the experience to kick the door down. Matsuyama, he's won here before. I think Hideki Matsuyama is one of the few people in the world that can run shoulder to shoulder with Rory and Scotty. When his game is on, he is magical. He's won at Riviera. He's won at Kapalua. He's won at Augusta National. And what I saw out of Hideki Matsuyama last week at the Valero Texas Open, the one thing he's been struggling with this season has been his work off the tee and his accuracy. He's gotten a little bit sloppy with the driver. Well, last week in Texas, in his last start, Hideki was 3rd in that field for strokes gained off the tee, 9th for strokes gained in approach, 7th in greens in regulation, and 10th in driving accuracy. If he's got the driver figured out, gentlemen, he's going to be in the mix.
Yeah, he's only missed the cut once in his entire career at Augusta. Scott's only missed it 3 times in his career. And you mentioned Young. I found it interesting that he's got 2 missed cuts and 2 top 10s. And in his 2 top 10s in his previous event, coming into the Masters before that top 10, he was runner-up in that event. Now he's coming in with a win.
Yeah.
So it's like that because that's something I always seem to gravitate towards whenever I see some conflicting past performances at a specific event. I'll go, well, what were they doing during that year? Well, what was going on? Because they all change every year. They're up, they're down. And that's what I found out. It is very, and it made sense that he was playing great golf when he played great golf coming into the Masters. He played really well his best golf at the Masters. So now he's playing as better as he ever had.
It's kind of like the formula we were talking about earlier. The course history, is extremely strong. The statistics, what areas of the game you want to excel at, and then current form. And if you're firing on all 3 of those cylinders, then you've probably got a pretty darn good candidate. Cameron Young, by the way, his last 3 starts, 7th, 3rd, and 1st.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, his game is really, his game, you mentioned he's coming in with a win. Fitzpatrick's coming in with a win. The talent level right now is just amazing. And we've talked about this before too. When you look at Tiger and everything he accomplished during his career, which was magnificent, and he still may go down as the best ever. We also have to keep in mind that he never had to go up against his competition.
Yeah.
And that enabled him maybe to get another 20 or 30 wins.
I would agree. No, I mean, it goes back to the argument of Jack or Tiger. And I always say, it's similar to me to the argument with Joe Montana or Tom Brady. I think Joe Montana was more dominant for about a decade, whereas Tom Brady did it for 20 plus years. Same thing with Jack. He did it for 20 plus years. Tiger was incredibly dominant for about 10 years. But at the same time, I think the competition that Jack faced was incredible. Tiger had to compete against Sergio, David Duval, Phil Mickelson, and Vijay Singh. And none of them could ever really beat him. Ernie Els. Nicklaus was Trevino, Watson, Palmer, Miller, Weiskopf, Floyd, Seve. You name it. I think he had a tougher road to hoe.
Okay, wow. So Morikawa, he unfortunately is dealing with a back injury, and it's too bad because before the injuries, and this is the negative side of future wagering, because if you would have looked at Collin Morikawa about a month ago before the injury, you would have looked, and I don't remember what his odds were, but I'm sure they would have been probably about 20-1 or something like that. That you would have figured, oh, he's good experience at Augusta National. He's playing tremendous. I don't think there's any player that's playing better than Collin Morikawa this year until the back injury, but the back injury came. And now, even though on some sportsbooks you can get 40-1 on him, it's probably, for anybody out there who's thinking about it, I don't really like what I'm hearing from him himself. His quotes this week just sound like he's just not going to be himself. Now, I'm not saying that, sometimes a wounded animal and a player, we've seen it happen before where they all of a sudden they start zeroing in even more on their game, and it helps them to use that to focus better. But he was playing so well before the injury that I can't imagine that he can play any better. But that's a big risk if you're thinking of taking Morikawa, even though the odds are just great value.
Yeah, you pretty much described exactly what I did. I did jump on Collin Morikawa exactly a month ago at 30-1. Oh. He won at Pebble Beach, and that's a requirement you'll see on the resume of a lot of Masters winners, that they have a win earlier in the season. He won at Pebble Beach, and then he started contending at Bay Hill, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, where he finished runner-up last year. And I said, okay, it's time. I'm going to jump in. And then, like you say, he pulls out of the Players' Championship a month ago on the second hole. He'd only played one hole, pulls out on the second hole, tweaked his back on a practice swing. It didn't appear that serious. I figured a month later, he's going to be okay. Like you say, he's describing himself as day to day. He says actually his back's okay. It's the other parts of his bodies that are adjusting to this injury. But you're right. If he's in form, he's got to be there, you would think, because the irons, you look at all the stats, he's doing everything just as well, if not better, than anybody on tour right now. And I'm really hoping that we get the 100% genuine article with Collin Morikawa, because if we do, I think we absolutely have a contender on our hands. I don't have a problem with 30-1. I've seen 35 as people have doubts about his health.
Absolutely.
If he can find 40, I think it's worth a sprinkle, because if there wasn't any question about his health, guy might be 15-1 right now. And we really don't know. He might be just jobbing us all, and he's perftly healthy. You don't know.
No.
There's not an injury report required in golf. So I think he is being honest that he's, close. I'm hoping he's close enough.
Before we let you go, Brady, speaking of futures, do you have any now for the PGA, the US Open, the Open Championship that you care to share? There's one that I've given out to my viewers. I did it about a couple months ago, and I was glad when I spoke to Jan Stevenson yesterday on the show that she backed me up with this, even though she has some bias towards Australians. But I said, you have to sprinkle Adam Scott in every major at 100-1. You have to. He's playing so good right now that all you have to do is win one major at 100, because he's 100-1 in every major. And if you could, and one of the things that people need to keep in mind with Scott, that this is not a coincidence that he's playing this well. The personal side of his life is tempered down. The kids are older. It's not a distraction anymore, a positive distraction. There's a lot of other things going on in his life that he's kind of severed to make sure that he knows I only got a few more years of this prime ability, and he's determined to win another major. And that's something that we know for the past 10 years. That's not been Adam Scott's life. Adam Scott was more about family, and those were the responsibilities that he cared about more than golf. Now he's focused on golf. Now he's in the best shape that he's been in a long time, and it's showing on the golf course. So that's why I think he's a great future play in all the majors, and hope you just win one. If you do at 100-1, you're making money. So what do you think about that? Or what do you think about any other futures that you'd like to give out today?
Well, I think it's well said, and it makes a bunch of sense. You would figure that the Masters and the British Open probably make the most sense for Adam Scott. He should have won the British Open at least once or twice, but both of those tournaments cater to people with experience, and he is a wonderful links player. Australians typically play very, very well in the wind, but he almost won the U.S. Open last year at the hardest golf course in the world, too. So, yeah, I think he could probably do it anywhere. The one you're not getting a good price at because the books know this is coming, but I wouldn't mind taking a stab at it. And maybe you can get even a better price right now because we've seen his price drift on the odds board for the Masters, and that's Scottie Scheffler at the U.S. Open. Scottie Scheffler at Shinnecock Hills in June will have the opportunity to complete the career Grand Slam. And that's going to be a big storyline. And he's going to be bet very, very heavily because of that storyline. But, we know he just had the kid. The game is a little bit questionable right now. By the time we get to June, we might see Scottie Scheffler looking like Scottie Scheffler again. And so I think it's worth a shot. I don't necessarily like to drive headfirst down narrative street, but Scottie can win anywhere at any time. So maybe if you're catching the odds on a little bit of a drift right now, before we get to New York in June, maybe you can get a little bit of a price there.
Excellent. That's excellent. I'll do that. I'll jump in on that. That was,
it's never a bad bet to bet on Scottie Scheffler to win a golf tournament, is it? So.
The worst thing in the world is when you're doing the one and dones, and if you happen to pick Scottie Scheffler on a week that he 15th, 12th,
right.
It's like, you got to be kidding me. This is, but right now is not the time to take Scottie Scheffler in one and dones, like you said, until he starts heading back to being that guy again. And he will soon enough.
Oh yeah. It could happen this week.
It could happen this week, but until that happens, you just have to hold them. You got more than enough. I mean, that's the other thing about professional golf. When I looked at the schedule in the next couple of months, it's like, everybody talks about it gets slow in the summer. Well, you must not be a golf fan, because there are so many great golf events coming up in the next couple of months between the 3 majors and 5 more signature events. It's going to be incredible.
Next week at Harbortown in South Carolina is a fantastic. I was lucky enough to play that golf course, one of my favorites I've ever played, and a terrific tournament. It's really interesting. It's almost a polar opposite from Augusta. You have this huge, massive golf property here this week, and next week we go to this little tiny thing on an island. So and the skill sets are all different. But
Brady, I want to know, what did you shoot?
Gosh, I think I played pretty well. I think I broke 90.
You are a good golfer, by the way. I'm not kidding about that. He is pretty damn good. But this is great. It's obviously, when you are handicapping this event or any event in golf, there's a lot of work. You got a lot. I mean, there's only 91 players in this one, but in some tournaments, a lot more. So you really have a lot of digging into stats and data and history, and there's a lot of work handicapping golf events. I don't do it. I don't handicap golf, and I don't play anymore, but I love the game. I love watching the game. As a matter of fact, I watched this last weekend. It was pretty interesting. But this is very interesting stuff, Brady. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here for another 4 hours and talk Masters, guys. Yeah. And this is almost one of, while it's probably my busiest golf week of the year as far as doing shows and providing content, writing articles and all that other stuff, it is also one of the easier, quote unquote, handicaps because it's so predictive. And again, like we talked about, guys that have experience, there's really only, there's not 100 guys in this field that can win. There's maybe 30. So, oftentimes this tournament, the handicap is not as laborious and extensive as it might be for, 3 weeks from now at the Zurich Classic or something like that.
Right.
So let's have some fun with it. And, I hope we're on the edge of our seat come the second 9 on Sunday.
I hope so. And the next time we do this, well, I hope if we do this in the fall, we know we have free lunch.
That's right. That's right.
And you can even take some stuff home too.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Brady. Appreciate
you got
it,
guys. Enjoy the Masters. Thank you.
Thank you, Brady. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Brady Cannon. We have, I check out matter of fact, his Twitter account is under Las Vegas Golfer. So you can check that out. And it was good to have Brady on last year. I learned a lot from Brady and it was really helpful because I didn't dive into some of these fantasy sites that he uses and a lot of the top handicappers use. And so I got educated on how to use them. And that really helped me out tremendously. Because like you said, Jim, it is a lot of work. So much so that I was even, when I do the show myself, it takes me about an hour to get through all the information because it takes almost a full day to handicap a golf event. And because you have to, you were here, you heard all of the different stats Brady was telling you about.
Well, yeah,
you got to check them all out.
Well, this event only has 90 players in it. Some events have a whole lot more. So
yes,
yeah, I mean, this is it's really amazing. Brady is absolutely one of the best, not only at golf but in sports. He's a pretty smart guy. He's very talented.
That's why it's very unusual to get someone like that on the show because there's not a lot of people out there that are dedicated to do that kind of work because it's a lot of work.
Now we also, so everybody grab onto this, come back to Proline TV. We have lots of great material on there. We're going to be talking about the NBA playoffs, baseball. We're going to talk about, of course, NFL, which never goes away, college football. Now, I don't know what rules are changing for the nil and the portal, but, we watched the NCAA, and in the last 2 years, last year we had 4 number ones make the Final Four. This year we had 2 number ones make the Final Four and a 2 and a 3. I think it's safe to say we don't have any more Cinderellas. And I don't think under the current rules we're going to see any more Cinderellas. Maybe if you got a 4 seed in there somehow, it would be almost a miracle because the best players are going to the biggest teams. And it's really the biggest teams are almost becoming an NBA farm system, so to speak. And I'm pretty sure you could say the same thing in the NFL with college football. So all things have changed by this big money that's being paid to these players. I loved it. It was a great game last night. It was a great tournament, but we're not looking for any more Cinderellas.
Unfortunately. So but it is what it is. And that's what's great though about at least when the football season does come to an end, we're able to pick right up with college basketball. And that takes us all the way through to the beginning of April. And then again, like I said, it all depends on what you enjoy in sports, but there's more than enough things going on between golf. And again, you mentioned the playoffs for both the NBA, the NHL, and baseball is a different animal because it could be sometimes a little long. I'm not talking about a game. I'm talking about the season, but there's so many things to do.
Oh, we have so many things. And congratulations to UCLA for winning the college basketball championship. I think it's the first time they've won that in women's sports. Yeah. By the way, women's sports is growing. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people that are resistant to it, but it's really growing. There's a lot of popularity out there for women's sports. If it's golf, basketball, and WNBA, and it might have probably started with soccer when we did so well with the women's soccer team in the Olympics because they played so well. But it's really growing, and it's a bettable sport. It's a winning sport, and WNBA is going to be starting up soon, and I hope that we can figure out how to cover that. I handicap it a little bit, but I'm going to start handicapping it even more. And I know Greg can't wait. I know.
Right. I'll be like I said, I have a busy enough schedule with we're taking a full day to get ready for golf. So I'll stick with that, and you can handle the women's sports deal.
Okay. All right.
All right. So and next week we'll see. Like you said, there's whether it's basketball or baseball or the NFL. And in a couple of weeks, the Kentucky Derby is going to take place. So I'm sure we'll have John Hardoon on, my guest each week. We'll have him on.
He's one of the best, and you don't have to ask me anything about horses. He knows more about horses than I'll ever know.
And he'll be in Vegas too. He comes to Vegas every year for a Derby show. So he'll be there live while he does our show. Probably on a Tuesday, he'll do because we'll do it early that week. We usually do it on Thursday, but we get all the information early on Kentucky Derby week, and he's got to travel. So maybe I'm sure I'll get him on, and we can have his not only the horse racing Derby show, but then we'll have him on as a special guest on this show.
Great. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Greg. Take care.
You got it. Thanks a lot to everybody out there. We'll see you again next week.